Okay. Well, it's great meeting you. This is great. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and what you're passionate about.
Yeah, so my name is David Vorick. I've been a software engineer, become CEO, got sucked into the startup world, and really like
That sounds
what
really negative. Got sucked into the startup world. It's
no,
not that bad, is it?
I definitely mean it in a positive way, but I use the word sucked because it is all encompassing.
Yeah.
And it does feel like I don't have a choice,
Hmm.
but at the same time, I would not do anything else, right? I feel so much more empowered versus like so I had an open job offer from Google and I could have gone to Google instead. And
Hmm.
every time that I ask myself, did I do the right thing? There's no question at all, right? I'm a million times happier doing
Yeah.
what I'm doing.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
don't want
so
to be a
I
cog in a machine. You don't. It's
definitely
basically a
not.
cog in a machine. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And so, where I am, I feel empowered to, I have certain things that I believe about the world, and I'm in a position to throw, the full weight of my just intellectual ability and also just manpower, just all of my manpower can go into changing the world in ways that I feel are productive. And in any other scenario, I'm not confident that I would be able to operate at 100%. And I'm sure that some boss would ask me to do things that I'm not 100% confident is the best use of my time. And so from that perspective, it's been amazing. As for like what this is, we specialize in decentralized data. And so I've really started to think about the cloud, not just as like iCloud and where you put your photos, but when you use YouTube, the videos that you're watching are in the cloud, or when you're on Twitch, that those streams are in the cloud, or Instagram, et cetera. The applications themselves have become the cloud, and we spend most of our time on the cloud and in the cloud, where our whole experience is owned and shaped by corporations whose kind of legal mandate is not to make our lives better, but rather to maximize shareholder value.
Yep.
And the more time that I spend in this world, um, the more apparent it is to me how like viciously predatory this world is, and like ads are not your friends. Like ads are a mechanism of mind control, and like the feed is not, it's not there to enrich you, it's there to addict you, right? The
Absolutely.
app wants
I
you to
couldn't agree
spend,
more. I couldn't agree
yeah,
more.
3-4 hours a day. And so um, our game, I guess, the thing we're trying to achieve is to take that data and move it out of the hands of corporations and into the hands of users. And so I like using YouTube as an example that, a content creator who uploads, let's say, over the course of a year, 20 to 50 videos, that's kind of their portfolio. Right now, YouTube owns it. YouTube decides who gets to see it. And like,
Yeah.
if you build up 10,000 subscribers, your relationship with your subscribers is completely dependent on and managed by Google or Alphabet now.
Absolutely.
Um, and we very much believe that if you've built this portfolio and you have these subscribers, it should be managed by you and them.
Hmm.
That, what you choose to put on your channel, what you attempt to monetize, that's between you and the people who love your content. And Google really has no business being in the middle.
Yeah.
And so we have built a platform that enables this relationship to happen. And so it's kind of weird in the sense that we're uh, part of a growing set of modern, like decentralized startups, where rather than trying to grab as much control as possible, we're trying to push as much control away as possible and
Hmm.
create the most fertile landscape for users. But this has very interesting tangential effects, which is like, because the data is owned by the content creator, whether it appears on YouTube or Vimeo or some random startup, is completely indifferent to the content creator, right? As long as they're interacting with their audience, and getting paid for their work, they mostly could care less who is presenting it, and so that
Yeah.
creates this much more I guess, just vibrant ecosystem where when you publish something, it can simultaneously appear in the YouTube feed and also in a Twitter timeline, and also on applications you've never even heard of. Like you don't have to know it exists to be part of that ecosystem and to be pulling, viewership from that ecosystem. And so I think that just gets powerful in ways that we call it the centralized web just can't compete with.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds as if that sounds like a dream come true for content creators, because they get to own their content. They get to, do they actually get to say where their content appears as well? So if I don't want my content to appear on sketchy site A, can I go in and say I only want it to appear on these specific sites, or is it more agnostic than that?
I think it is more agnostic than that. You could probably put like preferences in your content, but ultimately it's about user control, right? And so we believe that the user should be able to consume content in any way that they want to. And so if a user prefers, what the content creator considers to be sketchy website A, we really think we want to empower the user to interface through sketchy website A, with the caveat that we do want to protect the content creator's ability to monetize, right? So we really care about sustainability of the ecosystem, and if content creators aren't able to make a living, then they're into the same problem we talked about earlier, which is like they can't throw their full force of energy into their vision. They're stuck doing something else. And I definitely want to make sure content creators can hit sustainability at the lowest user count possible. And so so mostly we're user oriented, and then we also really want to protect that monetization level for content creators.
Yeah, because right now, especially if you're on the edge of the kind of content that YouTube doesn't want to be shown, you're constantly walking this fine line as to whether or not this is something, because it's kind of a chilling effect on free speech. It's like, what am I allowed to say? What am I not allowed to say? What am I going to say that's going to get me kicked off of YouTube? And then there goes your entire revenue stream, right? So it sounds like this is a way around it.
And I think, we especially saw the chilling effect in the past year with COVID, where most YouTube content creators had a period of several months where they refused to say the word COVID for fear of being demonetized. So whether or not that fear was legitimate, the chilling effect was very much there. YouTube creators were like afraid to talk about their real life experiences with this deadly disease because they weren't sure how, quote unquote, the algorithm was going to respond to that discussion. I think that chilling effect has a very strong material cost to our society. And in this case, in the sense that we had less resources to discuss and reason about the pandemic. And if you can take YouTube out of the middle, and content creators aren't afraid of what YouTube's going to think, they're only afraid of what their users are going to think, that's a much more pure relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably one of the things that I'm sad about when it comes to the internet, because when it first started, it was kind of a Wild West. Anybody could connect to anybody. And now we seem to experience it through these portals, this tiny set of sort of providers and portals that people will go through. And those portals have the ability to filter stuff out, right? But it sounds like your solution doesn't necessarily do that. How does it actually work?
Yeah. So that's a pretty complicated question.
Well, how would it work for me? Let's say I'm a content creator and I want to allow my videos to go everywhere. What would I do? I upload them to your service? Do I run a node on my machine? How exactly does that work?
Yeah, so you would use, I'm going to break things into creators and developers. So you have developers who are going to make apps like the decentralized version of Twitter and the decentralized version of YouTube.
Okay.
And actually, you would just go to the decentralized YouTube app and it would give you an upload interface. You would just upload it. And so that's the amazing thing. You don't need to run a node. You just need to make content and publish it. And then the applications will handle that for you. Then on the back end, what's happening is these applications are forming cryptographic smart contract relationships with people who will store the files and serve the files. And so you get this like combination storage layer and CDN layer that's all contract based. And it's also highly redundant and an open marketplace. So it's, when you upload to Google, that's going to Google Cloud. And there, you don't have a choice, but also that, that means Google's in control. Whereas in the decentralized version, we upload it to many different competing players. And so one of them can't independently decide, oh, this video is not available anymore, because their competitors will just be able to serve that video. And then that's also like a revenue thing. If you decide you're not going to serve a certain type of content, your competitors have revenue opportunity now. And we've done as much as we can to commoditize the infrastructure, so that, if you're being picky as an infrastructure provider, you are just strictly losing customers. You are faceless. Like our infrastructure providers don't have a brand. They don't have names. They don't have anything they're trying to protect. For them, it's just this purely like mechanical relationship where they provide infrastructure and then they get paid. And we think that's how infrastructure should be, this very, so to speak, dumb and opinionless thing. And then we make all the smart stuff where the developers and the users and the content creators are. And we give all the, executive decision making to the application writer themselves.
Interesting. So does this exist today, the infrastructure, or?
Yes, so most of the infrastructure exists today. The one piece that is still missing is the monetization. So right now everything is unmonetized, but if you're a content creator and you want to, publish videos to Skynet, you can do that, and you can upload videos, you can create a portfolio, you can create a, personal page of all of your content, and that exists in a decentralized space where no one can deplatform you, and you have a direct relationship with the users. And then, and as I mentioned, you can't monetize that just yet, but coming soon, hopefully by the end of the summer, you'll be able to get paid for your content as well.
Yeah, but just being able to put your content somewhere where it's unblockable, right, is like a huge thing for a lot of content creators, because they're worried about, will I be censored? Will I be removed? Will I say the wrong word, right?
Exactly. And if nothing else, it gives you a backup. It gives you a place you can go where you don't need YouTube. And that almost is, we're not big enough that YouTube thinks about us at all. But if we grow, YouTube has to compete with us, right? They realize that they can't exert control over content creators. And so we almost have the power to force YouTube to be a good guy. But I think I kind of mentioned earlier, when you move everything to the decentralized space, just the amount that applications can interact with each other and build on top of each other just completely overwhelms. It's overwhelmingly more interesting than what YouTube can do alone. I'm not sure if you remember, like way back with Facebook, there used to be all these apps building on top of the Facebook API. There were a lot of games, but there were also a lot of like just social add-ons. I mean, Twitter had some of this ecosystem as well. And that was a very vibrant, quickly growing ecosystem. And Facebook, and same thing with Twitter, both quickly grew afraid that they were losing control of their users and their main product. And so they shut those APIs down, and just kind of, I think in one decision, Facebook wiped out like almost $1 billion worth of startups because Facebook felt threatened, right? Whereas in the decentralized world, if there's a decentralized YouTube and you start to build on that data, you start to build on that user base, and you build a competing product that's really exciting, again, it's all decentralized. The original YouTube builder can't shut that API off. And so all of this, right now, like venture is nervous to fund startups that's too heavily reliant on, say, the Twitter API or the Facebook API, because they know if this does become a $1 billion company, it's at the mercy of Twitter allowing it to exist. In the decentralized world, you don't have to worry about that. If you're building on the decentralized Twitter API, that API will be there, because nobody can, there is no off switch for that API. And so from an innovator's perspective, it's much safer to make use of other people's work.
Yeah. But then if you're trying to, will this decentralized service also connect to regular APIs too? So can I get to the Twitter API through you, or is this a different version of Twitter or not another app like Twitter? So is that what
Yeah,
you're
so
talking about?
it's a parallel Twitter,
Right.
and we can connect in the very centralized sense of the word, where Twitter could decide that we're no longer allowed to connect, right? So because all
Right.
of
So they could
Twitter's
cut you off
world,
if they wanted to.
yeah, and so we could connect to them and maybe start to build a little momentum that way, but we would have to live with the idea that they can turn us off at any time. Whereas if we kind of build this independent thing and just kind of get it going from scratch, um, that will be there forever.
Right. How does this work with personal data? Does it also capture personal data? Can I store my personal data in the cloud in an encrypted way through this service as well?
Yeah, so that's what we're actually working on this week as our highest priority, is encryption. So right now, everything on Skynet is unencrypted. We call it
I love that you
discovery.
called it Skynet, by the way. It's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, we just wanted to be aggressive. But yeah, so today Skynet is really well built out for what we call discoverable content. And what that means is that if I know your user ID, I can find everything that you've chosen to publish. You don't have to tell me that you made a YouTube account. Just by having your user ID, I will be able to find out on my own that you made a YouTube account. And of course, this is very, very content creator friendly. But then there's the second side, which is, if you're uploading personal photos of your family, you don't want people to know when you're uploading photos. You don't want to know where the photos were uploaded from or how many, et cetera. Like, you might reveal you were on vacation, or you just don't want anyone knowing any of that stuff. It's your business.
Yeah.
So we're very close, like within a week of being able to support that. But right now, at this exact moment, it's not supported. But we call them hidden files. And again, the idea is that if you upload, to your personal account, some private data, any data, but we'll say, family photos, nobody can tell that you uploaded the photos. Nobody knows how many, nobody knows when, nobody knows from where. All they see is that the total pile of hidden files is now bigger, but they have no sense of where those new files came from or what they are. And so, yeah, again, that's almost ready. One more week.
Okay, so I won't put anything personal up, but I'll definitely move all my content over. Do you support audio as well? Do you have like a Apple Podcasts variant as well?
Yeah, so pretty much anything that any type of content that the centralized web can do, the decentralized web can do as well. So video, audio, photographs, blog posts. So I can send a pack of links for different ways to do this.
Oh, please! I'd love to see that, and I'd love to share it with my audience. This is great. I love this. So what's holding you back? I mean, why are more people using this?
I mean, so we've been growing very rapidly. I think we're at about 100,000 users per week at this point, and that number's been going up. And I think
Wow,
the big
really
thing
good.
is it's just time. At this point, we're talking to more and more people. They're getting excited. Enough of the technology is there that you can like sink your teeth into it and really feel like, oh, I'm part of the new internet. And it's just about pushing that wheel, like getting the snowball rolling down the mountain. It just needs to gain momentum. But it's moving and it's rolling and it's growing. And it's not at the bottom yet.
And you've got the scalability, so I don't have to worry about, we're gonna hit some kind of wall. I mean, because I guess I'm asking from on the back end, how do people become content providers? I mean, not content providers, but how do they join the network and provide space for all this content to be stored?
Yeah, infrastructure providers. So all this happens on a blockchain, which you're right to question the scalability of. And we've set our system up so the fundamental limitation of blockchain scalability comes down to number of participants. And so there are a finite number of infrastructure providers that can fit on the blockchain. And so the way we've managed scalability is that most users, when you when you access Skynet as a content creator, you go through what's called a Skynet portal. And you can pick any portal you want. They all do the exact same thing. But that portal is operating on the blockchain. And so we can have a finite number of hosts and a finite number of portals. But each host and each portal can get nearly infinitely big. And so in total, we can support maybe 1,000 portals and 10,000 hosts, which is comparable to the number of data centers that there are in the world. It's a similar order of magnitude. And then each portal can support, say, 10 million users today, 10 to 100 million users. And so that gets us pretty close. And so if we get the whole world onboarded and everyone's using Skynet every day, we probably have a little bit of work to do. But at least from a theoretical level, we should be able to build out to that point. And then as a user, it's just choosing which of the several thousand portals you want to connect to.
Right. And then there's the infrastructure providers. Like you mentioned that they were unbranded, right? So you wouldn't connect AWS or anything like that to this.
Yeah, and the big reason, like, we have no problem with AWS being one of the providers, except that it's just way too expensive, right? So when you have these unbranded infrastructure providers, the costs are a lot cheaper because they aren't spending money on like support or branding or there are a couple of techniques we've used that put us in a very separate category from AWS that allow us to get the prices much lower.
Right, but these are actual infrastructure providers. They're not. It's not some kind of peer-to-peer, massive peer-to-peer network, because if I upload it, none of it resides on my own machine. So it's like you said earlier, it's not a node on the network.
Right. The infrastructure providers are professionals who are tasked with, they know you have to keep this data online and you have to have an uptime of 95%. And I'll since I threw that number out there, so even each infrastructure provider is expected to have a 95% uptime. But because we spread the files across many, the files have 4, 5, 6 nines of uptime. They're much better than 95%. But the infrastructure provider, it's not some dude's laptop that's turning off every day when they commute. It's a dedicated machine that the purpose of this machine is to caretake data on Skynet.
Right. Okay. So it's pretty. It sounds like it's pretty solid. So you said that there was a YouTube analog. There's a app podcast. I mean, there's a Twitter analog and a Facebook analog and all those others as well.
So not all of that's built yet. There is a Twitter analog. There's not a podcast analog yet. There are blogging analogs, and there are a few things that you could call YouTube analogs, but they don't feel like YouTube. So the Twitter analog feels like Twitter, and the blogging analogs feel like blogging platforms. The YouTube analogs, they host videos, and you can create spaces where a content creator can present their portfolio, but it doesn't look like YouTube. It's not a feed in the same way that YouTube is. But that's another part of the the snowball that's rolling. The number of developers building applications on top of Skynet is growing every day, and the number of applications, I think this week we had somewhere around 30 new applications, and I haven't even had a chance to look at them all yet. But nice. I'm very excited to be exploring them. So yeah, and so that's something that is growing with time. We also have good support for music. There are several applications dedicated to making and sharing music.
And I guess, could those be used for podcasting as well, or?
Quite possibly. I can definitely ping the creators of those apps and see what they think about podcasts.
Okay, so I'll take a look at that. That sounds really interesting. So you've been around. How long have you been around for?
So we started as something called Saya, which was just focused on decentralized storage, and that was in 2014. So we've been around now for 7 years, which,
wow,
it doesn't feel like it's been 7 years. I'm gonna be honest. I still feel like I'm 23. Really,
I feel like an overnight success. You're an overnight success in 7 years.
It feels like it. But yeah, but then what happened was in late 2019, November 2019, we had this just kind of this spark of how to take everything we built for Saya and make it much more user accessible. And so just kind of overnight, what we were building felt like we went from like, you know, Sisyphus pushing the stone up the mountain to suddenly we just got to the top, and it just happened in like one instance. We're like, oh, it's downhill now. And we started pushing again. And it's, so the past year and a half has been very fast and very intense. But yeah, the number of active users has gone from like 500 to 100,000 per week. And it's just been, the amount of fun things that you can do with the platform has gone up so rapidly. And so that's all of our energy right now is just taking this and pushing it as fast and as far as we can.
No, I love it. I think it's a fantastic idea. My only concern is it's sort of like the same thing that happens to all of these over time. It's like you come out, you have a great vision at the beginning, and then over time you end up becoming like Google or like one of these other companies. I mean, what's to stop you from becoming that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something that I do wonder about. You know, there are several playbooks that, or several things that happen that I don't know that I have a solution to, but like one of the big ones is just when you go public, right? As a public company, you have what's called a fiduciary responsibility. You have to optimize for shareholder value, and that also means that once you go public, the talent you attract is talent that's morally aligned towards increasing shareholder value, and you have pressures from the shareholders to pull in people who are going to take care of them, and potentially even legal pressures, right? You don't want to be sued if the shareholders start to feel like you're not being responsible with the money from an ROI perspective. So that's something that you know, I definitely feel like if we IPO, we're going to have to IPO with a different structure. You know, some responsibility that maybe puts the Commonwealth first or the DWeb first. But that's an unsolved problem, and one we think about a lot. Another thing that we think about a lot is the mantra embrace, extend, extinguish, which is kind of it's how Microsoft defeated a lot of open source in the early days. Google's been doing this. The biggest example is Google Chrome. They came in, they made a web browser, and now they've started to add all these Chrome specific features that are closed source that makes applications and web apps easier to develop and faster to run on, but then they also only work on Chrome. And so just especially with like the advent of the pandemic and everyone switching to Zoom, you know, all these applications, all these video applications are like, really, you should be using Chrome with this application. And that's something that I think is very bad. It's very bad for the health of the ecosystem. And what's to stop that strategy from being effective on Skynet? I don't have a good answer for that at this moment, but I assure you it's something that we think about a lot, because we certainly don't want to see Skynet get taken over the way that the web got taken over. Yeah,
that's why I use Vivaldi. It's a Chromium browser, but I had to just leave it. It was just, not only was it a dog, but it was also, you know, you were seeing it go down this path, and it's like, I don't like the end of this path. I mean, I want to see the kind of freedoms that you guys are talking about, and it sounds like you're definitely going the right path, down the right path. So what's next for you guys? You're just in a growth mode right now, and then after that, I mean, what's your plans?
Yeah, I mean, so really, I feel like we don't have a great opportunity to look 10 years down the future, just because there are so many things on fire in the next 3 months. But the real big thing is that monetization piece. We really feel like the vision is not complete until people publishing content on Skynet are doing so in a sustainable way. And so until that sustainability component is locked down, that's where a lot of my mental energy is going, and where a lot of the dev team energy is going, is we really want to see this in place. And then beyond that, I think Skynet is complete, and it's really about collaborating with all the other efforts. We're certainly not the only effort that's fighting against the big cloud. And at the moment, we don't have a ton of energy to kind of like look around and work with everybody else who's fighting the same evils that we are. But as soon as our own kind of stack cools off in the sense that it's complete and the major vision is done, I think we will be able to look up more. And the big effort will be around finding everyone else who's passionate about the same things and kind of working together to just build a future where people don't feel required to interface with Google, where if you make a Google free just life, you enjoy all the same benefits that someone does who is not hiding from Google.
Right. But what I'd love to do is that one of the things that it really annoys me is all these virtual assistants like Alexa and Siri and Google. They're all the same, right? They're all, very embedded in our personal lives. They know everything about us. They're listening all the time. It would be great if we could actually build our own personal bot that resides on a network like Skynet and can do everything that these other bots can do, but keeps our information private to ourselves and works on our behalf, maybe even negotiating with those other bots. Is this something that is conceptually able to be built on Skynet?
Yeah, I think conceptually is more than possible. I do think it'd probably be a bigger project, right? But I'm fully with you, right? Like, I love the idea that I have a complete history of where I've been geographically. Like, I love opening up my app and looking at all the places I've traveled. I hate the idea that this geography is shared with Google.
I know.
Which Google didn't know. I want to know just me, and we have the technology, right? Like, there's nothing about my GPS that needs to report my location back to Google. It could just record my location for my use only. But of course, I can't buy a phone that does that. And I do think if we look maybe 3 to 5 years down the line, that's something that we believe we can turn Skynet into like a full operating system for smartphones. And so you would open up your phone, you would log into Skynet, and then that's just kind of it. You just have the web browser. And so Firefox tried to do this with a phone a couple years ago, but what it was missing was decentralized storage. If you can't save your personal data, you can't save personal files like a list of where you've been. It's just really hard to build a complete experience, and so it feels empty compared to, say, Android. But if we can add this decentralized storage layer, I think we can get to a point where you have a phone that's just a web browser, and yet it feels completely comparable to an iPhone or an Android. And so, I think that's probably, a couple of years down, but certainly, if someone were to try and build it today, there would be nothing stopping them, right? That's something they could get to work on today.
So I could conceivably build a device like that, and it could run on Skynet, and I wouldn't have to worry about anybody grabbing my data because it's going to be on this decentralized infrastructure that you've built.
Yeah, and then after next week, it'll be on the encrypted piece of the infrastructure, and people don't even know that you have a Skyphone, let alone what types of data you're using with your Skyphone.
Skyphone, I love the name. I hope you got the domain now. So you're saying 10 years from now, where do you think you're going to be?
Yeah, so if everything goes well, and it certainly seems to be picking up steam, I think 10 years from now, like, YouTube will still exist in the same way that AOL still exists, but all the quote unquote
that's
cool
a burn.
Yeah, all the cool kids will have moved over to Skynet, and there will be this rich ecosystem. And I think kind of similar to how when MySpace upgraded to Facebook, they did the same thing, but they felt very different. I think it'll be the same way when the proper replacement to YouTube will feel very different. And it won't just be YouTube. Facebook will have moved over, and Instagram and everything social will have moved over to decentralized. And the way that you use it, because again, instead of being 12 completely separate silos, it will just be you. And I think a world where you own all of your data, it's hard to imagine, but I think we will be there in 10 years, and we will know how that panned out. And yeah, Facebook will be, a thing of the past.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, I mean, each one of these social networks is an island unto itself. They all really need to be connected to the individual. And it's kind of like, I have 12 different chat apps. You shouldn't have to communicate with me through 12 different chat apps. If you want to chat with me, just fire up an instant message session and connect to me directly. Why would I have to go through 12 different chat apps? It just makes no sense. So is that kind of where the end game is here? There's no branded network like Facebook or Twitter or whatever that we go through, but it's just sort of interconnectivity between individuals and groups over Skynet?
Yes, I think so, and I think chat is probably one of the first things that will fall. Because I agree, it's ridiculous that you need 12 chat apps, and so there's going to be a 13th in the sense, well, not even a 13th. It'll just some will be Skynet. Some chat app will come out that's Skynet connected, and that will put pressure on every other chat app to also be Skynet connected. And because Skynet's decentralized, anyone can make a chat app that is Skynet connected. And so if you prefer Telegram, and I prefer Signal, we can still talk to each other over Skynet because there's a common, the data layer is common, as opposed to Signal having to ask Telegram for permission to use the APIs and like that. That's a big political mess. The brilliance of Skynet is that it eliminates this political mess with sharing data. Applications can just access the core user data. And that's, so I think chat is a great example of something that will probably fall sooner rather than later.
How soon? I want this now.
I hope, it could be 3 months and it could be 1 year. It really comes down to what developers are most excited about building. So we have about 500 developers, and each developer kind of has their own grudge against the centralized world, and that motivates them around the app that they choose to build. And so it's really about waiting until the right person with a grudge against the 12 messengers shows up. But there are enough of those people that it is only a matter of time. They'll be here.
So it shouldn't take that long. It should be there. So speaking of development, I mean, how do I get into your developers program? Like if I wanted to build something, what would be how do I do that?
Yeah, so we have a Discord channel. It's discord.gg/SkynetLabs. Mm-hmm. And that's where all of the developers hang out. You can ping us. There are, we can send you resources for how to, take 3 hours and make your very first Skynet app. And then from there, as you have ideas, whether it's a messaging app or something else, there's a huge community would be like openly excited to just go back and forth with you on the best way to, build whatever you have in mind. And I think in general, we're all kind of excited about the types of things that can be built. And so it really doesn't matter what your idea is, because we're just excited anyway. We think the technology is amazing, and that every little piece is a new door that opens to things that we can do that we couldn't do before. And it's just so thrilling because it's so early. So you'll be embraced in open arms if you show up in our Discord and say, I had an idea. And so, I would love to see you or any of your audience on our Discord.
Oh, fantastic! This is great. I'm totally gonna get I'm totally gonna get either myself or there's a few friends of mine who are coders who are like, oh, I definitely want to. So, what kind of skills do you need to be like? What kind of a developer? Like, what would help me to build apps on the platform?
Yeah. So the big thing is that everything is pretty much in JavaScript. Mm-hmm. But the good news is that it's actually all very friendly JavaScript, and we've really built. So we have an SDK that abstracts all of the decentralized and distributed systems pieces for you, and so you call functions like store file and retrieve file, mm-hmm. And then all the complex distributed system stuff happens, underneath that. It's abstracted away, and so we've done, our absolute best, and I think we have done a great job of making Skynet application development accessible to, the entry level, like college student level JavaScript programmer. Mm-hmm. And so it is all in JavaScript or TypeScript TypeScript is fine. But you don't need to be some distributed systems master's degree. You can be almost any JavaScript developer, and start to build something interesting.
Fantastic. I know a number of JavaScript developers who would love this. Think it'd be amazing. So I really, really love this. So what's the best way to contact you if somebody wants to get more information?
Yeah, so you can reach me personally at david@sciosky.net, or you can reach someone else on the team. And I will caveat, I'm not great about checking my email, but if you email hello@sciosky.net, the team is much better about checking and responding to emails. So both, feel free to reach out to both of those. And I'm also on Twitter at twitter.com/David Vorik.
Excellent. Excellent. So I'll put your contact information in the show notes. So anybody wants to get in touch with you, they can go direct. And I'm going to, right after this, I'm going to check it out and see what I can do, because this sounds fantastic. It's a dream come true, man. You guys are on the, and it reminds me of, I don't know why it reminds me of Silicon Valley. The show, right?
I do, yes.
It's like the second internet that they were creating, and like where you had to run it on refrigerators and stuff like that. It's a bit like that, right? Isn't it? I mean, the whole distributed platform.
Yeah, there are a lot of similarities. Thankfully, we've never had to run things on refrigerators, but in that same idea that it's an open system that anyone can participate in. You don't have to be $100 million cloud giant to jump in and provide infrastructure and make money. And that really benefits everyone, because that means, clever, creative people who are in unique situations to provide good infrastructure have the opportunity to do so. Whereas with the traditional cloud, they really don't. And your unique situation, if you don't have a brand name, is worth nothing. On Skynet, you can capitalize on opportunities that you have.
Yeah, well, that's why I thought. The original promise of the internet is sort of interconnectivity from person to person, and we've gone so far away from that. And it sounds like this is bringing us back towards that more sort of person to person level of connectivity.
Absolutely, and I think that's where all this originated. I think me, my co-founder, and almost all of our employees kind of have a history of being very active on the kind of the pre-Reddit, the pre-YouTube days of the internet, whereas mostly like forums and stuff, or even like web rings. That's kind of what we miss.
There's a word from the past. I remember those.
Yeah, and it's just like, it was a simpler time, but it had this just like warmth to it that Reddit does not have. And we think that we can build something that is as useful as Reddit, but has the warmth of the web ring days. Yeah.
Well, it's interconnectivity from person to person. That I think that we have to bring that back and forget about these middlemen that are causing all this grief. So, I mean, this is great. I love it.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. This has been great, and I'm definitely going to be heading right over there right after this. Thank you so much.
Super excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Okay. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.